Imagine your retirement fund has been invested into a promising gold mine. Sounds amazing, right? But wait, what if there was no gold at the site? And the one person with all the answers is the chief geologist who just jumped out of a plane, committing suicide. Find out how a mining company committed one of the biggest crimes in stock exchange history.
Surely one of the biggest frauds in the history of the world, probably the biggest mining fraud of all time.
And got away scot-free. It all started with David Walsh, a penny stock promoter from Calgary, Alberta. Though he had a rough start in business, he was finally able to raise money through a public equity offering in Canada to start a company. So, in 1989, Walsh founded Bre-X Minerals Limited, a small Canadian mining company. Bre-X was a collection of smaller companies sharing the prefix Bre. As the name suggests, the company's focus was on mining various minerals. David Walsh teamed up with geologist John Felderhoff, a Dutchman who was known to many as the Indiana Jones of geologists. So, John Felderhoff became the chief geologist and vice chairman of Bre-X's board of directors. Felderhoff had an extensive background as a geologist before joining Bre-X Minerals. He was born in Holland and moved to Nova Scotia, Canada with his family in 1954. He graduated with a geology degree from Dalhousie University in 1962. In the early part of his career, Felderhoff worked in Africa and Indonesia. He played a significant role in developing major Indonesian mining projects, including the Oktedi and Mount Merle mines. Together, Walsh and Felderhoff began acquiring mining properties around the world, with a focus on Indonesia. That's because in the 1990s, Indonesia was seen as the land of opportunity for gold prospectors due to its rich natural mineral sources. John Felderhoff believed that the province of East Kalimantan on the island of Borneo was a gold mine waiting to be explored. So, in 1993, Bre-X acquired the rights to explore a remote site called Busang, located in the jungles of Borneo, Indonesia. It was nearly 500,000 acres of land. The company claimed they had nearly 80% of ownership rights to 3 different areas around Busang. Overseeing the exploration at Busang was Bre-X's chief geologist, a Filipino named Michael de Guzman. De Guzman had experience hunting for gold deposits across Southeast Asia and was known for his enthusiasm and ability to find promising prospects. Michael de Guzman, born on Valentine's Day in 1956 in the Philippines, was an experienced geologist with a flair for adventure. Known for his love of karaoke, beer, and wearing gold, de Guzman was a man of many wives and even more ambitions. Prior to joining Bre-X, de Guzman had developed his own theory about how gold deposits form. He believed that when volcanoes collapse back onto themselves, the massive heat and pressure create gold. This volcanic pool theory further motivated Bre-X's selection of the Busang site, as it was located near active volcanoes. De Guzman argued that it made an ideal location to test his hypothesis. At the start, Bre-X was a little-known junior mining company trading for just pennies per share. It had not made any major gold discoveries or attracted significant investor attention. But at the site in Busang, Bre-X made some promising initial findings. The company's fortunes changed dramatically in 1993 when de Guzman reported back to Walsh and Felderhoff that the Busang site contained a huge amount of gold reserves. He claimed that the site had 20 million tons of material with up to 2 grams of gold per ton. This was equivalent to at least 1 million ounces of gold. Now, at the time, gold was trading approximately $400 per ounce. This implied that the total value of gold at the site was nearly $400 million. In January 1994, Bre-X claimed that their first drilling efforts had revealed that the deposits contained sizable amounts of gold. In a series of press releases, they confirmed the discovery of the highest grade reported to date. This news sent Bre-X's stock price skyrocketing, making it one of the most valuable mining companies on the Toronto Stock Exchange. The company's market capitalization soared to over $6 billion as investors clamored to buy the stock. De Guzman, along with Briex's founder David Walsh and chief geologist John Felderhoff, were seen as visionary prospectors who had made a historic gold find. By March 1994, Briex announced that they had discovered economic gold mineralization from 33 feet to 99 feet over a continuous intercept of 66 feet, averaging 0.12 ounces a ton, including a 40-foot interval, averaging 0.19 ounces a ton. A few weeks later, they announced that new drilling operations revealed gold deposits that were even better than previously found. They went as far as admitting that the gold deposits found at Busang were significantly higher than that of the Kellyan mine deposit. Now, this was a huge claim since the Kellyan mine contained resources of up to 5 million ounces. It was a successful mining operation which was close to the gold mine of Briex. Hence, the competition arose. Over the next several months, they claimed that new drill holes revealed gold deposits of 2 to 4 grams per ton. Evidently, Briex's stock began to rise higher than before. By September 1994, they issued another press release that stated that 22 of the 31 drill holes completed at Busang revealed significant width of gold mineralization. Briex said that they were confident that they could mine 30 to 60 million tons of material at an average of 3 grams of gold per ton. This meant that they could excavate 3 to 6 million ounces of gold in total. This was clearly a significant increase from their original claims of 1 million ounces. But they did not stop there. In November 1994, they announced that an additional drill site had discovered even more promising results. David Walsh was reported to have said that the company would have a drill-confirmed reserve of 2.5 million ounces of gold by the end of 1994. But this wasn't all. He said that there was even more gold at the deeper levels below 150 meters. This amounted to another 1 million ounces of gold. He also relayed that 2 other sites on the mine would reveal another 2.5 million ounces of gold. Walsh relayed that the extraction of gold was highly profitable since the density of gold was about 3 grams per ton. Since the extraction cost was only 1 gram per ton, this meant that the remaining 2 grams were pure profit. Walsh confidently reported that the other drill sites would yield another 2.5 million ounces and had similar gold density with similar profit margins. In the year-end statement of Briex, the company claimed that the Busang deposit is very likely to become a gold mine of elite world-class status. Our current objective is to drill out 30 million ounces by early fall 1996. Briex relayed these promising discoveries to its investors, establishing its presence as the company that was on the threshold of proving to be the world's largest gold deposit ever to be discovered. These statistics gave investors all over the world the confidence to pour their money into Briex, making it one of the most valuable mining companies in the world. But such meteoric growth without commensurate operational results should have raised alarm bells for the investors. It is also important to note that Briex's meteoric rise was fueled entirely by the Busang gold find, as the company had no other major assets or projects prior to that. Moreover, their methodology of testing gold deposits had begun to be challenged by some analysts. In response to this, Felderhoff stated these concerns were merely the result of people not having proper knowledge on the subject. He said, "I strongly suggest that those individuals commenting on the reliability of the cyanide leach assay method to go back to school. I do not have time to educate them on the various grade determination methods for gold, commonly used on a global basis in the mining industry." De Guzman's volcanic pool theory was used to justify Briex's unorthodox mining practices, such as testing the entire core sample rather than storing half for future audits. Briex crushed the full contents of each drilling sample rather than splitting them into half and securing a portion for future testing by partners or others. This deviation from standard industry protocols should have prompted more scrutiny from investors, but unfortunately, it did not. When an investor casually asked the Australian head of the local assay lab if the gold was really there, he nearly jumped out of his skin. It seems obvious that investors appear to have overlooked the need for third-party validation of the company's claims. But soon enough, Bre-X claimed that an independent engineering firm, Kilbourne Consulting, had been brought in to test the result of the drill holes, and that the result indicated that their previous estimates of gold deposits were actually understated by at least 12.9%. In 1996, Bre-X stock started trading on the Toronto Stock Exchange. There, its stock price rose to $280. This was a 100-fold increase compared to 2 years ago. It also started trading in the US on the NASDAQ exchange. During this time, its drilling results revealed even more favorable results. In June 1996, they announced an additional 14 million ounces of gold in one another drilling zones at the site. They stated that Kilbourne Consulting had calculated that 46.9 million ounces of gold had already been discovered at Busang, even though only 25% of the property had been explored as of yet. Let's discuss the major reason behind all these investors flocking to pour their money into the company without performing independent testing. It was Bre-X's relationships with top brokerage firms like Nesbitt Burns and JP Morgan, which helped bolster the company's credibility and lent heavy support to its claims and operations. As Bre-X progressed from one stock exchange to another in North America, it was able to enlist top brokerage firms like Canada's Nesbitt Burns Limited to finance its activities. Bre-X also enrolled New York-based JP Morgan & Company as a financial advisor to the company. Having a prestigious Wall Street firm like JP Morgan associated with Bre-X further enhanced the company's perceived legitimacy. With the backing of these top-tier financial institutions, Bre-X was able to clear regulatory hurdles from Calgary to Washington, satisfying officials that its claim about the Busang gold deposits were sincere. This shows how Bre-X was able to overcome scrutiny from market regulators. The Canadian press eagerly touted Bre-X as a world-beater company, adding to the hype. The fact that Canadian prospectors had uncovered some genuine major mineral finds in recent years also contributed to the excitement around Bre-X. The work at the Busang site continued, and as estimates of the gold grew, so did the number of investors. But soon, this would come crumbling down. At the start of 1997, it seemed as if the people who had been doubting Bre-X's claims were perhaps right all along. It was revealed that the company's claims of having 80% ownership of the rights of drilling activities were not true. David Walsh openly admitted that this level of ownership was simply impossible. He said that the company never imagined that they would be able to hang on to 90% of the deposits. This was because Indonesia's then-president Suharto ruled that a small company such as Bre-X Minerals could no longer solely own the site and reap its rewards. It demanded 40% of the ownership stake. The government also stated that Bre-X should be assigned by a larger, more experienced mining firm. So a deal was struck with U.S. company Freeport-McMoRan. Before agreeing to take on all the financial risks, Freeport-McMoRan needed to do its own checks. Its geologists were sent to drill twin holes in the Busang deposits to retrieve samples. Freeport relayed what they experienced at the drilling site. They said that Bre-X didn't care at all about properly logging their core samples. As stated earlier, all samples were crushed rather than being logged for future reference. This method of testing was virtually unheard of. They also stated that it was impossible for igneous gold deposits to form nuggets. It was simply not possible. Moreover, there was no gold at the surface of the site. Bre-X, acting highly unprofessionally, claimed that the gold at the surface had been destroyed because of humic acid. That was far from the truth. Hence, the Busang gold deposit was nothing more than an elaborate hoax. The result came back the same from the two different labs. No traces of gold could be found. The comparison between the reports of Bre-X and Freeport is striking. It's very interesting to note that Freeport drilled at the same site as Bre-X, but found literally no traces of gold. Unbeknownst to Bre-X's investors, de Guzman had been systematically salting the drill samples with gold dust, making it appear that the site was far richer in the precious metal than it truly was. He accomplished this by leaving open bags of rock samples in his office and blending in gold-colored powders before sending them for testing. It was revealed that no independent drilling had actually occurred at the site prior to the advent of Freeport. Walsh and Felderhoff were informed of the new data by Freeport-McMoran. They instructed de Guzman, who was at a convention in Toronto, to return to Busang to meet the Freeport-McMoran team to provide answers. On the evening of March 18, 1997, de Guzman was seen at a karaoke bar, singing his heart out and having the time of his life. The next morning, de Guzman boarded the helicopter alone. When de Guzman entered the helicopter, he was the only one there. The pilot helps him with his seatbelt, and de Guzman notices that the pilot is the one who usually flies the chopper. The helicopter flies up in the air, heading towards the gold mine in Busang. Of course, de Guzman had taken many flights just like this, going back and forth from the supposed gold mine. But something was different about this one. As it continues to fly above the rows of green trees, suddenly there's a loud bang and a whoosh of air. The helicopter pilot struggles to maintain control of the chopper. He looks back and an empty seat stares back at him. The left-hand door was now open. De Guzman had jumped 800 feet to his death. During the initial investigation, handwritten suicide notes were found in the helicopter, and 4 days later, a body was recovered in the vast jungle. Another independent report confirmed that there was no gold at all at the Busang site. Rock samples dating from 1995 to 1997 were analyzed and found to have been tampered with through a process called salting. Fragments of gold from another source had been sprinkled among rock samples via a salt shaker to falsify results. Interviews with Bre-X employees who worked at the Busang site revealed de Guzman's suspicious behavior, such as leaving open bags of rock samples in his office that he would later tamper with. Studies by an Australian company as early as 1995 found that the gold flakes extracted by Bre-X seemed to fall too easily from the samples and looked like an alluvian gold panned from a river rather than volcanic gold. 6 weeks after de Guzman's death, the Busang gold dream was over for everyone. Bre-X stock tanked on the Toronto Stock Exchange and the Nasdaq. Its stocks plunged by 80%. By March 24, 1997, the stock had fallen to less than 10% of its highs. Its $6 billion valuation had been reduced to nothing. This caused immense financial harm to investors. They lost an estimated $3 billion, and the Ontario Securities Commission launched an investigation, though they were unable to uncover the full extent of the scam. Many of the innocent victims were public sector organizations, which included the Ontario Municipal Employees Retirement Board, the Quebec Public Sector Pension Fund, and the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan. It's heartbreaking how these retirement funds lost hundreds of millions of dollars merely due to the lies and deception of two white men. What's more, during these years, all insiders, including David Walsh and John Felderhoff, had been selling the company's stock. The list of insider transactions was startling. David Walsh alone sold chunks of company stock. This amounted to $25 million worth of stock sold in 1995 and 1996. His wife Jeanette sold even more than that, amounting to $30 million. However, this was no comparison for the proceeds earned by John Felderhoff. He took home more than $70 million worth of stock. Other insiders and subsidiaries of Bre-X sold even more stock. It seemed as if all insiders benefited from the fraud. It was later revealed that Bre-X's financial partner, JP Morgan, had doubled the claims of the company. Bre-X had announced the cost for mining at the site to be $96 an ounce, but JP Morgan relayed the cost to be way less. JP Morgan also stated that there was more than double the amount of gold at the site. It is shocking how JP Morgan made these outrageous while being the leading mining bank in the world. They even visited the Busang site themselves. They also had extensive knowledge regarding the ways and processes of mining operations. JP Morgan had even sent their own analysts to the drill site to review the work Bre-X was doing. but it seems as if they did not notice any faults or red flags that Freeport had noticed. So it's evident that JP Morgan was just money hungry and was in a race to land Bre-X as its client since it came with the promise of tens of millions of dollars. JP Morgan just wanted to make money off of institutional trading commissions. Almost 30 years later, no one has ever been held accountable for the scam. After the scandal, David Walsh moved to the Bahamas in 1998. However, his home was invaded by gunmen who demanded money, but the incident was resolved without any bloodshed. Just 3 weeks after this, Walsh was found dead due to a brain aneurysm. None of the other insiders were charged with fraud. In 2007, a Canadian judge ruled that Felderhoff had been unaware of the swindle and found him not guilty of insider trading after a trial that continued for over 6 years. He spent the rest of his life enjoying the $70 million he made off of selling company stock. The Dutch geologist eventually died in 2019. JP Morgan has also not been convicted of wrongdoing or held accountable for their actions. De Guzman's death seems very suspicious. Had he killed himself to keep from admitting he'd been the mastermind behind the scheme? There are concerns regarding his suicide notes. According to Felderhoff's cousin, Suzanne Felderhoff, he had doubts about de Guzman's ability to have authored them. She claims that her relative had never heard him speak about the physical illness mentioned in the notes. Another suicide letter, according to insiders, was addressed to a finance manager at Bre-X that de Guzman was not really acquainted with. It had one of de Guzman's wives' names spelled wrongly. Following the release of the autopsy reports, de Guzman's family recruited Dr. Benito Molino of the Filipino investigation team to review the evidence. According to Dr. Molino, he noticed bruises on de Guzman's neck in the photos of the body recovered in the jungle and came to the conclusion that strangulation was the cause of death. When he was dead, he must have been thrown out of the chopper in the jungle to make it appear he committed suicide, says Molino. In big crimes, there will always be a fall guy, so we don't believe that the real mastermind will be identified. However, was the body really de Guzman's? According to the forensic anthropologist Dr. Richard Tartaron, who collaborated with Molino, based on preliminary descriptions, it would seem the person had been dead for more than 4 days, which was the amount of time it took for the body to be found. Jeannie, the spouse of de Guzman, adds that although her husband had prosthetic teeth, the teeth on the body that was discovered were undamaged. De Guzman's family has never made his dental records available, according to Wilton. Jeannie de Guzman's friend, geologist Monsieur Geiger, claims she told him her husband was still alive and had fled to South America. Geiger thinks he settled in the Cayman Islands at this point. As his mother had informed him, the son he shared with Jeannie thinks his father might still be alive. He shares his father's occupation as a geologist and is committed to carrying on his heritage in the proper manner this time. Perhaps I could establish my own mining operations, remarks Michael de Guzman Jr. Be the better Mike de Guzman and get some investors. Pop culture adapted the story into a movie called Gold, where Matthew McConaughey plays the role of David Walsh. However, the names were changed due to legal reasons. One of the most well-known financial scams in history, the Bre-X scandal serves as a warning about the dangers of the stock market and man's potential to plunge into the depths of depravity just for money. That wraps up the episode for today. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe.